But I thought my late husband was at least as brilliant in human relations as my late father. Uh, and there was one thing where I didn't play a huge role I didn't play any role at all for that matter in running Purdue. When Frank and I married, there were 16,000 people. And I don't know how to run a plant. I can't advise somebody in auditing or accounting or whatever. But having grown up in the hospitality industry, there was something that I could contribute. And Frank and I got married really quite rapidly after meeting. Uh, when we actually did marry, we knew each other in person 6 weeks and 3 days. So, but we had I'd been living in California. He was Maryland, and we met in March and married in July. But the reason we didn't see each other a lot in between was because we could talk for a couple of hours by telephone every night. And I think you can get to know a person really, really well when you're talking by phone. And we had a promise to each other that would tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so when we actually did marry and were living together, I felt there was no adjustment period, except right at the beginning, I told Frank, I think we should entertain every single person who works for the company. And he said, that's not realistic. There's 16,000 people. And I said, I bet we could have them 100 at a time. And he said, no, that's way too many. And I was sort of pretending that I wasn't processing the fact that he wasn't agreeing with this. And I said, I bet we could put it together in 6 weeks. No, that's way too soon. And we went round and round with me sort of pretending I didn't know that he was saying no. But as we went round and round, gradually he started to, take it seriously. And then finally he said, I like it. 6 weeks later, it was August. By the end of September, we began inviting people 100 at a time from every part of the company. And the goal was to entertain every single one of them. But the company kept growing. There were 20,000 by the time of his passing. But we did. And here's what Frank did that I thought was just superb. Frank acted on a saying that comes from William James, a psychiatrist from 120 years ago. And William James said, the deepest principle of human nature is the craving for appreciation. And so the reason that Frank was willing to have 100 people at a time 3 times a month in our home for dinner, as a buffet dinner, was because it was a way of showing appreciation for people. And I wonder if any other Fortune 500 size company has a boss or an owner who will just invite truckers, veterinarians, accountants, administrative assistants, everybody. Whoever you were going to get an invitation to Frank's for dinner. And at these dinners, Frank would pay attention to each person. And then at the end of the evening, he'd invite them to ask questions about how the company was doing, or even about their own particular situation. And I thought that showed a huge amount of understanding of human nature, that when people can get the word about their company from the man whose name appears on their paycheck, it's a whole different level of engagement. And then at the end of every evening, in different words, he'd look out of his audience of 100 people, and he'd say, I know the company wouldn't be what it is today if it weren't for you. Thank you. And again, what does it mean if you're 5, 6, 8 layers down in a great big company, and the boss invites you over for dinner and thanks you?
Yeah, amazing.
I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Because he really liked people too. One of the things that he did, he knew a phenomenal number of names. I mean, I'm going to guess it's thousands, because we could go into a plant, and I got to accompany him fairly often, and the number of names. Say it's a plant with 1,000. I bet he introduced me to 200 people by name, and probably could have done more if we'd been there longer. And he wouldn't just know their name. He'd say, Mitzi, I'd like you to meet Maisie. Maisie's son just got into college, or meet Darnell. Darnell's been with us 30 years and he's never had a sick day. And I mean, what must it mean if you're a worker on like a factory and the big boss knows your name and knows something about you? And I always used to be amazed, or not really amazed, but how about deeply impressed that, Frank is the owner. And we go through, and I think it would have been so possible for him to walk along with his nose in the air, I'm Mr. Big. But I always felt that his body language was more, we're a team. And I respect your role in this very, very much. It wasn't, I'm big and important. No, I've got all the respect in the world for what you're doing.
Well, it sounds to me like he really epitomized the idea of servant leadership, where his role as a leader was to help the other people do their best and shine and discover what they're capable of. And he knew how to do that.
And I can remember, something that would happen. We have celebrations when a plant has gone, I may not have the figures right, but directionally I'm right. Supposing they've had 1 million man hours without an accident, and maybe the number isn't that big, but directionally I'm certain of this. So there's a celebration. There have been so many man hours or woman hours, people hours without an accident. But supposing that the plant, it's operating around the clock, and the celebration for one shift is like at 3 a.m. And Frank, to attend it, has to drive like 10 hours round trip, 5 hours there, 5 hours back. He'd regularly do it. Because, and I'd say, Frank, you're 78. You could just sleep through the night and not do this. And Frank said, no, I know it would mean something to them. This is a big event, and it would mean something to them if I show up for it.
Yeah, he was very focused on what they needed and what they wanted and what it would matter to them. So,
or another case where I saw him do that, there were, this has got to be maybe 25 years ago, so it's probably forgotten. I mean, if you're 60, you remember this, but here's the story. During the Desert Storm, there was a horrible moment where some of the prison guards, it was discovered that they were just totally mistreating prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? The MPs who they came from my area, or at least a lot of them did, and so maybe 4 or 5 people had really misbehaved, but that meant that something like 258 people were just, they had gone to serve their country and now they're returning home in complete shame. I mean, it was an awful moment. And if you've given 2 years of your life and what you're getting is shame, well, several of the people who were, actually there's like 2, and they weren't the guilty people. They weren't the ones who had behaved badly. They were part of this group of MPs that were returning, but they were returning to, I guess it's Western Maryland, and to get there from Salisbury, it's like an 8-hour drive. Frank and I, with him driving, went to welcome them home. And Frank, why are we doing this? And he said, because look what they've given for this country. To have at least one civilian, or 2 actually, because it was me there too, to have a couple of civilians who aren't related to them come and welcome them home and say, we appreciate what you do, that's going to mean something to them. Well, I've met several of the people who were part of that. And even 25 years later, they still say, it just meant the whole world to us. That we were afraid everybody hated us. And here's somebody who's a big, important person who's taking time out from his life to make a very long round-trip drive just to be there for us.
Amazing. It is. It sounds like he had amazing perspective, and he was able to identify where he could make the biggest impact, and he was willing to just do it.
Yeah, I mean, he was... What brought that particular story to mind is you said servant leadership. Well, that's servant leadership, driving way out of your way for people who need some encouragement
For
or some
sure.
appreciation.
Yeah.